everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Easy English Podcast. I'm Hannah, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Alex. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hey, Hannah, I'm doing great, thank you. And a big warm welcome to all our listeners out there. Whether you are walking the dog, making breakfast, or just relaxing, we've got a really fun story for you today.
Yes, we do. Today's story is perfect for English learners. It's an everyday, beginner-friendly story about a tiny mistake that turned into a bit of an adventure. Have you ever taken the wrong jacket by accident, Alex?
Oh, absolutely. More than once, especially in winter when everyone seems to wear the exact same style of dark, warm clothing. It's so easy to do.
Exactly. Today, we are talking about a character named Tom. Our story starts on a very cold, snowy Friday evening in December. Tom was invited to a big holiday party at a popular restaurant in the center of the city.
December. That's prime coat season. A prime season means the best or most common time for something. So December is prime coat season because it is freezing.
That's a great vocabulary word, Alex. Prime, like spring is the prime season for planting flowers. Anyway, the restaurant was called the Cozy Spoon, and it was packed. Packed is another word for extremely crowded.
Right. If a place is packed, there is almost no room to move. There were people everywhere, laughing, eating delicious food, and enjoying the holiday music. Now, because it was freezing outside, everyone was wearing thick winter coats.
When Tom arrived, he took off his coat. It was a classic, heavy black winter coat with a silver zipper and a big, fluffy hood. He looked around for a place to put it.
Usually at these busy restaurants, they have a coat rack near the entrance. A coat rack is a wooden or metal stand with hooks where guests can hang their jackets.
Yes, and this coat rack was absolutely loaded. There were dozens of coats hanging there. But Tom managed to squeeze his coat onto a hook right in the middle. He didn't think twice about it and went inside to join his friends.
To not think twice about something means you do it quickly without worrying or planning. It's an automatic action. For example, I didn't think twice about buying the book because it was so cheap.
Perfect example. So, Tom had a wonderful time at the party. He ate pizza, drank warm cider, and talked with his coworkers for hours. But by 11 o'clock, the party was starting to wind down, and Tom was feeling very tired.
Wind down is a great phrasal verb. It means to gradually come to an end or relax. As the party winds down, people start to leave and the music gets quieter.
Exactly. So, Tom said goodbye to his friends, walked over to the crowded coat rack near the door, and looked for his coat. The restaurant was dimly lit, which means the lights were quite low and soft.
Romantic lighting, but not very helpful when you are looking for a specific black jacket among 50 other black jackets.
Not helpful at all. Tom saw a heavy black winter coat with a silver zipper and a big fluffy hood hanging right where he thought he left us. It looked identical to his coat. Identical means exactly the same.
Yes, like identical twins. They look exactly the same. So Tom grabbed the coat, put it on, zipped it up, and walked out into the cold, snowy night. He felt warm and happy as he walked toward the bus stop. But as he was walking, he decided to put his hands in his pockets to keep them warm. And that is when he noticed something very, very strange.
Ooh, the plot thickens. What did he feel in the pockets, Alec? Well, the very first thing his fingers touched was a pair of thick, woolly gloves. Now, you might think, okay, it is winter. Of course there are gloves in a coat pocket. But Tom did not own woolly gloves. He always wore thin leather gloves. So that was clue number one.
A classic clue. His hands were probably thinking, wait a minute, this is much too soft and fuzzy to be ours. Did he stop right there on the street?
He did. He stopped right under a yellow street lamp in the middle of the falling snow and pulled his hands out of the pockets. He reached into the left pocket again and pulled out those woolly gloves. They were bright red. Tom would never wear bright red gloves. He prefers dark colors like gray or black.
Red,
gloves. That is a very clear sign. So what did he do next? Did he search the other pocket?
By the way, if you are enjoying this story and want to help our podcast grow, taking a second to like this episode or subscribe to our channel really helps us reach more English learners around the world.
It really does. And please leave any questions in the comments, as we love reading and answering them. Anyway, back to our coat mystery.
Yes, he quickly reached into the right pocket. His hand brushed against a small piece of crumpled paper. He pulled it out, smoothed it flat with his fingers, and held it up to the street lamp to read it. It was a paper receipt. Receipt is a great word for our English learners. It is spelled with a P, R-E-C-E-I-P-T. But we do not pronounce the P. We say receipt.
Exactly. A receipt is that little piece of paper you get after you buy something showing how much money you paid. For example, I kept the receipt for my new shoes in case I need to return them. So what was this receipt for, Hannah?
It was a receipt from a local bookstore just down the street. It was dated that very afternoon at 4 o'clock. And at the bottom of the receipt, there was something even better than a list of books. There was a name printed on it because the person had used a bookstore membership card.
Oh, that is incredibly lucky. A name is the perfect clue. What was the name on the receipt?
The name was Sarah Jenkins. Tom stared at the name. He did not know any Sarah Jenkins. But then he remembered how crowded the restaurant was. There were at least 3 different birthday parties happening at the same time. He realized what had happened. He had taken Sarah's coat, and his own coat was probably still hanging on that busy rack.
Oh no, that means Sarah was probably still at the restaurant. Or maybe she was already looking for her coat and finding only Tom's coat left behind. Can you imagine the confusion? You go to leave and your coat is gone, but there is another one that looks just like it.
I would be so worried, especially in the freezing winter. So, Tom knew he had to act fast. He looked at the receipt again, hoping to find a phone number, but there was only the name of the bookstore and the name Sarah Jenkins. He decided the best thing to do was to walk back to the restaurant immediately.
That is a very smart move. Go back to the scene of the mix-up. Mix-up is a wonderful phrasal noun, by the way. It means a mistake or a misunderstanding, usually when things are confused. For example, there was a mix-up with our hotel reservation, so we got a room with 1 bed instead of 2. Here, we have a coat mix-up.
Yes, a total coat mix-up. So Tom turned around and hurried back through the snow to the restaurant. His heart was beating a little fast because he felt quite embarrassed. He did not want people to think he was a thief.
Right, because taking someone else's property, even by mistake, can make you feel very guilty. But it really was an honest mistake. The coats were identical. When he got back to the restaurant, what did he see?
Well, he opened the heavy wooden door of the restaurant and the warm air hit his face. He walked straight to the coat rack near the entrance. He looked at the hangers. There was only 1 black winter coat left on the rack. He walked closer and checked it. It had his favorite blue keychain hanging from the inner pocket. It was his coat.
Oh, thank goodness. So his coat was still there. That meant Sarah had not left the restaurant yet. Or if she had, she did not take his coat by mistake. But wait, if his coat was still there, where was Sarah?
Tom looked around the busy dining room. He saw a group of people standing near the bar, looking a bit stressed. In the middle of the group was a young woman with curly brown hair. She was talking to the restaurant manager and gesturing toward the coat rack. She looked very cold and upset.
Let me guess, was that Sarah Jenkins?
Tom guessed the same thing. He took a deep breath, walked over to the group, and politely cleared his throat. He said, "Excuse me, are you Sarah?" The woman looked at him, surprised, and said, "Yes, I am Sarah. How do you know my name?"
Oh, this is the moment. He has to explain the whole mix-up. How did he do it without sounding strange?
He did it very gently. He smiled warmly and said, "I think I have something that belongs to you." He showed her the bright red woolly gloves and the bookstore receipt. Then he pointed to the heavy black coat he was wearing. He said, I accidentally took your coat from the rack. They look exactly the same, and I did not realize it until I felt these gloves in the pocket.
And how did Sarah react? Was she angry?
Not at all. In fact, her face immediately relaxed and she started to laugh. She said, "Oh my goodness, I was so worried someone had stolen my coat. I was just telling the manager that I would have to walk home in the snow without a jacket." She looked at the coat Tom was wearing and then looked at the coat still hanging on the rack. She laughed again and said, "You are right. They are completely identical."
Completely identical. That is such a relief. It is always wonderful when people are understanding about these kinds of situations. It really was an easy mistake to make. So they swapped the coats back right there?
Yes, they swapped them right there. But first, they decided to check the pockets of both coats together just to make absolutely sure they had the right ones this time. Tom handed her the red gloves and the receipt, and she checked the inside pocket of the coat he was wearing. She found her bus pass and a small chapstick. She smiled and said, "Yes, this is definitely my coat. Thank you so much for bringing it back." Then Tom took his own coat off the rack. He searched the pockets and found his own gray gloves and his keys. He felt a huge wave of relief. He said, "I am so incredibly sorry for the trouble. I really should have checked the size label before I walked out."
That is a great point, Hannah. It is always a good idea to double-check things that look identical. In English, we use the word identical to describe two things that look exactly the same, like twin brothers or two black coats from the same shop. To double-check means to check something a second time to be absolutely sure. For example, you can say, "I always double-check that I have my keys before I lock the front door." It is a very useful habit.
It really is. And Sarah was so nice about it. She actually said, "Please do not apologize. It is a crazy cold night, the restaurant was packed, and the lighting near the coat rack was very dim. Anyone could make that mistake." That phrase, "anyone could make that mistake," is a wonderful way to comfort someone who is feeling embarrassed. It means the mistake is very common and normal, so they should not feel bad about it.
I love that phrase. It really helps to lower the tension. When you say anyone could make that mistake or it could happen to anyone, you are showing empathy. Empathy is when you understand and share the feelings of another person. It makes the other person feel much better. So what happened next? Did Tom just leave after the swap?
Well, they actually stood by the coot rack and chatted for a couple of minutes. Sarah was there with a small group of friends from her work, and they were all very friendly. Since Tom had felt so stressed just 10 minutes earlier, this warm conversation was a great way to calm down. He learned that Sarah worked just 2 blocks away from his own office. They even realized they sometimes go to the same coffee shop in the mornings.
What a small world. That is another common English idiom. What a small world. Or, it is a small world. We say this when we meet someone unexpectedly, or when we find out we share a common connection with a stranger, like going to the same coffee shop or working in the same area.
Exactly. Tom said, "It is a small world indeed." They laughed about it, and Sarah said she would probably see him around the neighborhood. Then Tom put on his own coat, making sure it was definitely his this time, and said goodbye to Sarah and her friends. He walked out of the restaurant and back into the cold night air, but this time he felt warm and happy inside.
That is such a heartwarming ending to what could have been a very stressful night. It really shows how a little bit of politeness, honesty, and clear communication can turn a bad situation into a very pleasant one. If Tom had panicked or just left the coat at the restaurant without talking to her, it would have taken much longer to solve the problem.
You are so right, Alex. The way we communicate in these situations is key. Let us look at the language Tom used when he first approached her. He did not say, "Hey, you have my coat," or "Why did you leave your coat here?" That would sound accusatory. Instead, he used very polite, indirect language. He started with, "Excuse me," which is the perfect way to get someone's attention politely.
Yes, excuse me is essential. And then he said, "I think I have something that belongs to you." This is very gentle. It doesn't blame anyone. It just states a helpful fact. Belongs to you means it's your property. it's yours. For example, this blue umbrella belongs to my sister. Or, does this notebook belong to you?
And then he explained the situation step by step. He explained the mix-up clearly. A mix-up is an informal word for a mistake or a misunderstanding, especially when things get confused. For example, there was a mix-up with our hotel reservation, so we got a different room. Using the word mix-up makes the situation sound less serious and more like an accident.
That is a very useful word for English learners to know. A mix-up. It sounds much friendlier than saying a serious error or a big mistake. It keeps the mood light. Another thing Tom did well was showing the evidence, the red gloves and the receipt, right away. This proved he was telling the truth and helped Sarah understand immediately without any confusion.
Yes, showing the items was very smart. It made the explanation quick and visual. Now, let us think about how we can practice this. Imagine you are at a cafe, Alex, and you accidentally take someone's umbrella because it looks just like yours. You realize your mistake, you walk back inside, and you see the person looking around for their umbrella. What would you say to them?
Ooh, that is a classic rainy day scenario. I would probably walk up to them, smile, and say, "Excuse me, are you looking for an umbrella? I am so sorry. I think I accidentally grabbed yours because it is identical to mine. Here it is."
That is absolutely perfect, Alex. You used accidentally and identical, which we talked about earlier, and saying, "I think I grabbed yours" is so natural. To grab something means to take it quickly with your hand. In a hurry, we often grab the wrong thing. It shows it was just a quick, honest mistake. What if the other person is a bit annoyed at first? How would you handle that?
If they look a bit upset, I would just stay very calm and warm. I might say, "I am really sorry for the inconvenience." That is a wonderful, polite phrase. Inconvenience means trouble or extra difficulty. So by saying sorry for the inconvenience, you are acknowledging that you made their day a little bit harder and you're truly sorry for that. It usually softens people up right away.
Yes, sorry for the inconvenience is an excellent phrase for both casual and professional situations. You can use it if you are late for a meeting, if a delivery is delayed, or, like in this story, if you mix up your belongings. It is polite, respectful, and very common in everyday English. Now, let us look at the happy ending of our story. Tom and Sarah met up, they swapped their coats, and they even laughed about it.
Exactly. To swap means to exchange one thing for another. You give me this, and I give you that. For example, "Can we swap seats so I can sit next to the window?" Or in our story, they met at the cafe to swap their coats back. It is a very common, friendly verb that you will hear all the time in English-speaking countries.
And it's much more common in casual speech than exchange. We swap phone numbers, we swap stories, and we swap clothes. It sounds very natural. Now, let us do a quick summary of the key vocabulary we learned today so our listeners can practice and remember these great words and phrases. Let us start with the clothing vocabulary.
Great idea. First, we had winter coat, which is a heavy jacket you wear to stay warm. Then we talked about the pockets, which are small bags sewn into your clothes where you can keep your keys, phone, or in Tom's case, a receipt and gloves. And we had gloves, which you wear on your hands to keep your fingers warm when it's cold outside.
Perfect. And for describing things, we used two really important words. Identical, which means exactly the same. For example, the two houses look identical. We also used accidentally, which means doing something by mistake, not on purpose. For example, I accidentally spilled my coffee on the table.
Yes, those are incredibly useful adjectives and adverbs. And for polite social interactions, we learned some fantastic phrases. We had excuse me to get someone's attention. We had belongs to, as in this belongs to you, to talk about ownership.
And we learned mix-up, which is a friendly word for a mistake or misunderstanding.
And let us not forget the verb to swap, which means to exchange, and the polite phrase, sorry for the inconvenience, to apologize for causing a small problem. These are all practical, everyday words that will make your English sound much more natural and polite.
They really will. It is amazing how just a few simple, polite words can turn a potentially stressful situation, like losing your expensive winter coat, into a friendly chat and a happy resolution. Tom and Sarah handled it perfectly, and now they both have their own warm coats back for the rest of the winter.
They certainly do. Well, that brings us to the end of our story and today's episode. Thank you so much for listening and practicing your English with us today. Remember to try using some of these new words and phrases in your own conversations this week.
Yes, keep practicing, stay warm, and we will see you in the next episode of the Easy English Podcast.